Julia here. Foreshadowing is tricky business. It took me a while to kind of get the hang of it, and there are still some times where I'm like, is this too much foreshadowing? Is this not enough foreshadowing? How am I going to do this? So today I'm going to give you some tips on how to properly foreshadow in your story. The first thing you're going to want to do is point out the plot points that you might consider foreshadowing. I usually make a list and kind of maybe pinpoint in my outline places where it might be a good idea to lay that foundation. You don't want to foreshadow everything in your story, but the major plot points are really good places to start. So definitely make a list of all the places that you're considering foreshadowing. The second thing you're going to want to do is choose what to foreshadow. Like I said, not everything that you wrote down in your possible foreshadowing list you will want to foreshadow. So here are a couple of mini tips. One of the things I recommend doing is foreshadowing leading up to the climax, but not the climax itself. You want to keep readers on their toes, and if they are able to pick up on the foreshadowing and kind of predict ahead, you still want some moments that they're completely caught off guard about. If you're writing a series, a good thing to foreshadow, if you've hopefully planned this far in advance, is events later on in the series. For example, in Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling foreshadowed the love between Hermione and Ron very early on in the series, and it's a great way to watch it bloom and blossom as it goes on, so that when it finally does happen, it makes sense and it's not just out of the blue. Overall, it's a very delicate balance, so make sure you're thinking through each of your plot points before you decide to foreshadow them. My third tip is to conceal it, but not too much. The thing about foreshadowing is it's not just like in a movie where you can show a quick frame or two of something and then move on, and the reader will be like, hey, why was the camera zoomed in over there? There's really no way in a book to differentiate between word to word, if that makes sense. It's all printed on a page, and if a reader happens to zone out for a second, or if they're skimming the page, or if they're just trying to read fast, they might not pick up on it. So my main way to make sure that people pick up on foreshadowing is to put it at the beginning of a paragraph. Readers are more likely to remember something if it's at the beginning of a paragraph than if it's in the middle of a big block of text. I worked on that in Missing Her. There's a couple of moments that are foreshadowed that occur at the beginning of a new paragraph of description, and a lot of times I had my readers pick up on that and be like, oh yeah, I do remember that, and it really helps them just remember it later on, because there's a lot of words to read, so it's hard for them to remember a sentence or two, especially if it seems like it's out of context. My fourth tip is when you finally do get to the climax, recall the foreshadowing subtly. So in my case, in Missing Her, I'm not gonna spoil anything, don't worry, but when I did finally come to the moment, I had a moment where I had Vanessa thinking back on all of the instances where this foreshadowing took place and how it made sense leading up to that big reveal moment. So again, I would take a moment, if it makes sense in the scene, to just kind of pinpoint back to some of those places. And if you've had super intense readers like I am, some of the readers will actually go back and read through and see where they are. I've totally done that, where if I've been like, oh yeah, I vaguely remember that, but I don't remember it exactly, I'll go back, flip through the book, and find the instance so I know exactly what the author is talking about. My fifth tip is to check with your readers. Once you've written it and you've put it out to some betas, ask them. Say, okay, did you kind of pick up in the foreshadowing here? Was it too obvious? Was it not obvious enough? What did you think about it? Did it make sense? Was it out of the blue? All that good stuff. That is the best way to figure out if your foreshadowing is good, because you as the author know all of the answers to everything in the book, so it's gonna be a little bit tricky for you to kind of gauge if it's a good enough foreshadowing job that you've done. So asking your readers is the best way. So that's all I have for you guys today. I hope you learned a little bit about foreshadowing and hopefully decide to use some of these tips in your own work. Do you have any other foreshadowing tips? Feel free to leave them in the comments below. I'd love to hear about them. Thank you for stopping by. Bye!